Tonight is about people who vanished. Not moved away and lost touch, vanished. Not went off grid for a bit, vanished. I mean, here one moment, completely, totally, inexplicably gone the next. We've got the most famous female pilot in history, mid-flight over the Pacific, radio goes quiet, never seen again. An entire colony of 115 people wiped off an island overnight. No bodies, no struggle, one word carved into a post. We've got a man who hijacked a plane in a suit, collected his ransom money, stepped out the back door at 30,000 feet in the rain, and was never found. A pilot who radioed in that something was following him in the sky, and then mid-sentence, static, gone. And 3 lighthouse keepers on a remote Scottish island. Half-eaten meal on the table, chairs knocked over, door open. All 3 of them, gone.
So, lights off, get comfy. We are not solving any of these tonight. Nobody has. But we are going to sit with them, and I promise, by the end of this, you will not feel great about being alone in the dark.
Amelia Earhart. If you know one thing about her, it's probably that she vanished. But before that, she was extraordinary. First woman to fly solo across the Atlantic. Set record after record. In an era when most people thought women shouldn't be pilots at all, she was the most famous pilot on Earth. And in 1937, she decided to do the thing nobody had done. Fly all the way around the world along the equator. She makes it most of the way. 22,000 miles in. She's on the last leg. A tiny island called Flannan Island in the middle of the Pacific. July 2nd, 1937. Her navigator is Fred Noonan. The plane is a twin-engine Lockheed. The weather is rough. The island is almost impossible to spot from the air. And then, the radio goes quiet. The last transmission the U.S. Coast Guard picks up, Earhart sounding frustrated, saying they can't find the island, fuel is running low, and then nothing. The U.S. Navy launches the largest search in its history. 66 aircraft, 9 ships, covering 250,000 square miles of ocean. They find nothing. Not the plane, not wreckage, not Earhart, not Noonan, not a single piece of anything. And then the theories start. Crashed and sank? Most likely, honestly. But also, she landed on a remote coral island called Nikumaroro and survived for weeks as a castaway before dying there. Bones were found, then lost again. Because of course they were. Another theory, the Japanese captured her and she died in custody. Another, she was a spy. Another, and this one's my favorite, she faked her death, returned to America under a new identity, and lived quietly in New Jersey until 1982.
The New Jersey theory has exactly 0 evidence. But you know what? The real answer also has almost 0 evidence. Because nothing was ever found. What we know, she was one of the best pilots alive. She was running low on fuel. The island was tiny and hard to find. The ocean is very deep. The most likely answer is also the saddest and the most boring one. She ran out of fuel, hit the water, and sank before anyone could reach her. But nobody knows. And that's the thing about Earhart. It's not just that she vanished. It's that someone that famous, that accomplished, that visible, just disappeared completely. And the world couldn't find her. It still can't.
1587. England sends 115 people across the Atlantic to set up a colony on Roanoke Island off the coast of what is now North Carolina. Governor John White leads them. His own daughter is in the group. His granddaughter, Virginia Dare, is born there. the first English child born in America. They settle in, they start building, and then they realize pretty quickly they don't have enough supplies to survive the winter. So John White sails back to England to get more. He promises he'll be back within the year. He leaves behind 115 people, his family included. He gets in his boat, he sails away, and then England goes to war with Spain, the Armada. Every ship in England is needed. Nobody is sailing to America. John White spends 3 years trying to get back. 3 years. Writing letters, begging, arguing, while his daughter and granddaughter are on an island on the other side of the world with nobody coming. He finally gets on a boat in 1590, 3 years late. He arrives at Roanoke. The settlement is completely empty. Not attacked, no signs of a fight, no bodies, no blood, no broken doors. Everything just abandoned. Homes empty, belongings gone. One clue. A single word carved into a wooden post at the entrance to the settlement. Croatoan. The Croatoan were a local Native American tribe on a nearby island, and White had agreed with the colonists before he left, if they moved somewhere, carve the name of the place. If they are in danger, add a cross. No cross, just Croatoan. White tries to sail to Croatoan Island. A storm pushes him back. He never makes it. He sails back to England. He never returns to America. He never finds his daughter. He never finds Virginia Dare. He never finds any of them.
Here's what we think probably happened. The colonists couldn't survive where they were, so they integrated with the Croatoan tribe, moved in, merged, became part of the community. There's evidence for this. Later explorers found Native Americans in the area with gray eyes, who knew English words, who had European objects in their homes. So they probably survived. They probably just stopped being a separate English colony and became something new. But nobody knows for certain. And John White, who left his entire family on that island, spent the rest of his life never knowing. He wrote about it, said he tried to comfort himself, but you can tell from the writing he never really did. 115 people. One word. No answers. November 24th, 1971, the day before Thanksgiving. A man buys a ticket at Portland Airport under the name Dan Cooper. Suit and tie, dark sunglasses, briefcase. Completely unremarkable looking. He boards a short domestic flight, Portland to Seattle, about half an hour in the air. He orders a bourbon and soda, pays cash, lights a cigarette, and then he passes a note to the flight attendant. The note says he has a bomb in his briefcase. He opens the briefcase to show her. Wires, a red cylinder, something that looks convincingly like a bomb. His demands, $200,000 in cash, 4 parachutes, and a fuel truck standing by in Seattle. And here's the thing, he's completely polite about it, calm, no threats beyond the original one. He orders another bourbon. He lets all the passengers off in Seattle before the plane refuels, lets them all go. The plane takes off again. Just Cooper, the crew, and a bag of money. He tells the pilots to fly low and slow, heading toward Mexico. Somewhere over the forests of the Pacific Northwest, southwestern Washington state, he goes to the back of the plane. He ties the money bag to himself. He opens the rear staircase door, which on this type of aircraft can be opened mid-flight, and he jumps into the night, in a suit, in November, in the rain, over dense forest, with a parachute that may or may not have worked. The crew felt a bump as he jumped. That's the last confirmed moment anyone saw D.B. Cooper. Searches found nothing. Not him, not a parachute, not a body. In 1980, a kid found a small bundle of the ransom money on a riverbank, partially decomposed. Still, the only physical trace ever found.
The FBI investigated for 45 years, longest-running case in U.S. history. They had over 1,000 suspects. They tested hundreds of leads. In 2016, they officially suspended the investigation. Unsolved. He was never identified. He was never found. Nobody knows if he survived the jump. Most investigators think he probably didn't. Jumping at night, in rain, over mountain forest, possibly with a non-functional parachute, in a suit with no survival gear. The odds were not good. But no body, so nobody knows. And somehow that uncertainty turned him into a folk hero. There are festivals, songs, a whole mythology. People dress as him for Halloween. The town of Ariel, Washington, closest to where he jumped, throws a party for him every year. The only unsolved hijacking in U.S. aviation history, and he's beloved for it. Which is kind of insane when you think about it.
October 21st, 1978. Melbourne, Australia. A 20-year-old pilot named Frederick Valentich takes off in a small Cessna 182 from Moorabbin Airport. Solo flight, routine. He's heading across Bass Strait, the stretch of water between Victoria and Tasmania, to pick up some crayfish. He's been flying for about 47 minutes when he contacts Melbourne Air Traffic Control. He says there's an aircraft following him. He can't identify it. The controller asks him to describe it. Valentich says it's large, moving very fast. 4 bright lights, almost like landing lights. It's passing over the top of him. It's not an aircraft he recognizes. He says, "It's not an aircraft." The controller asks him to repeat that.
Valentich tries to describe it more, says it has a shiny metal surface, says it's orbiting above him, his engine starts running rough. He says, and I'm reading from the actual transcript, quote, "It is hovering and it's not an aircraft." Then he says it's approaching from the southwest, then it's stationary, then it's moving again. The controller tries to stay calm, keeps asking questions. Valentich says his engine is coughing. And then 17 seconds of a strange metallic scraping sound over the radio. And then nothing. Complete silence. Valentich and the Cessna were never found. Australia launched a search. Nothing. No wreckage, no oil slick, no debris, nothing in the water, nothing on the coast. The full 17-minute transcript was released. People have analyzed it for decades. Some say he fabricated the whole thing and staged his own disappearance. Some say he got disoriented in the dark, flew into the water, and the aircraft was a hallucination or a misidentified light. Some say what you think they say. The Australian Department of Transport investigated for years. Their conclusion? Cause unknown. Frederick Valentich was 20 years old. He was not experienced enough to be flying over water at night under instrument conditions. He was, according to his instructors, the kind of student who made up stories. None of that tells us what happened. The transcript is 17 minutes. 17 minutes of a man describing something, getting more confused, his engine failing, and then that scraping sound, and then nothing, for almost 50 years. And finally, the one that I think about the most. The Flannan Isles. A cluster of tiny, remote, rocky islands about 20 miles west of the Outer Hebrides, Scotland. In 1900, there was one lighthouse on the largest island, Island Moor. 3 lighthouse keepers, James Ducat,
Thomas Marshall, Donald MacArthur. Their job? Keep the light on. That's it. They rotated in and out. You did your shift. The relief keeper came. You went home. December 15th, 1900, a relief ship called the Hesperus arrives at the island. Nobody comes to meet them at the dock. The flag isn't flying. The crew tries to signal the island. No response. They go ashore.
The lighthouse door is open. Inside, a half-eaten meal on the table, chairs overturned. The clock stopped. Everything exactly as it would be if three men had stood up very suddenly mid-meal and left. But to where? The lighthouse log was checked. The last entries were disturbing. Thomas Marshall had written on December 12th that there was an awful hurricane and that James Ducat was very quiet, and Donald MacArthur had been crying. On December 13th, storm still raging. All three of us praying. On December 14th, storm ended. Sea calm. God is over all. December 15th, nothing. And here's the strange thing. There were no storms recorded in that area on December 12th or 13th. The weather logs don't show it. Whatever they experienced, nobody else recorded.
The most credible theory, one of them went out to check on the equipment on the western cliffs, an area that had suffered storm damage. The other two saw a freak wave coming and ran to warn him. All three got swept off the cliffs by a rogue wave into the sea. There's physical evidence for this. Equipment had been moved, ropes were tangled, one of the safety railings had been bent. And yet, if MacArthur went out without his coat, which was found hanging inside, it means he ran out in an emergency, which means he saw something. And they were experienced men. They knew the sea. They knew those cliffs. The inquiry's conclusion was the rogue wave theory. It's probably right. But the meal half-eaten, the chairs knocked over, the last log entries about storms that didn't happen and three grown men praying, it's the details that stay with you. That's always what stays with you.
5 disappearances. 5 stories where the ending is nothing. And I think the reason they stay with us is that we're not used to that. We expect resolution. We expect answers. We expect that if we look hard enough, we'll find the thing. Earhart's plane is somewhere at the bottom of the Pacific. Probably. The Roanoke colonists are probably the ancestors of the Croatoan people. Probably. Cooper almost certainly didn't survive that jump. Probably. Valentich got disoriented and flew into the sea. Probably. The lighthouse keepers got hit by a rogue wave. Probably. But probably isn't knowing. And knowing is what we want.
And in the silence where the answer should be, something moves in. Mystery, mythology, story, people dressed as D.B. Cooper at a festival, theories about Earhart living in New Jersey until 1982, poems written about the lighthouse keepers, films, songs. The gaps we can't fill, we fill with something else. Which maybe says more about us than it does about any of these stories. We need it to mean something, even when it doesn't. All right, that's enough of that. Get some sleep. I'll have another one for you next week.